Let's throw our hands in the air as we soar through the sky.
Yatta!
We'll catch the sun with your hand in mine, and if we work as a team, everything will be fine.
Yeah!
Oh, it's Cure of the What Now?
Let's henshin and start the show!
Hello, fellow paranormal investigators of Alzora Middle School, and welcome to Cure of the What Now, the only show where we know the best way to stop a ghost from taking your skin is to offer it sweets. I'm your host, Kat, and I'm a spooky haunted doll who's waiting for my friends, or maybe is just, running a grift.
And I'm the co-host, Joel. I'm here to stop all the ghosts from coming through. And quick note, when offering sweets to a ghost, make sure that you have done a deep psychoanalytical analysis of this creature, because if you offer it a candy that it doesn't like, for example, if you were to offer my ghost a Tootsie Roll Pop, I'll take your skin just out of spite.
Well, and you should really know any dietary restrictions the ghost has.
Of course.
If that ghost has ghostly celiacs and you offer it something with gluten, you're just a bad person.
Oh, man. And I know we're talking about sweets, but could you imagine offering a drumstick to a vegan ghost? That's just rude.
It is rude. Yeah. Welcome to the episode 19 of Cure of the What Now. I need to get better at including the number when I do the intro, because I've heard that helps people be like, oh yeah, I haven't heard this episode before.
Cure of the What Now? I think the fact that each episode have a different The Only Show Where We Know, I think that also would help people clue in. And it seems like, compared to our other podcasts, more people listen to us on YouTube than do for King of the What Now, and we have that number prominently displayed up there.
That's true, we do, thanks to your incredible thumbnail work.
Well, this last week, it was, for episode 18, it was your handiwork that made such a beautiful thumbnail, so we both are talented artists that throw images with transparent backgrounds on that.
We throw transparent image spaghetti at a YouTube wall and see what sticks.
Absolutely. Now, I believe that usually you allow me to do the Patreon-related updates and announcements at the beginning of the show, so I think I've explained this before, but just in case I've never mentioned it on Cure of the What Now, every 3 months we have people on Twitter vote on what bonus episode of the podcast should go up on the live feed. And thanks to an outcropping of PreCure fans, we are going to be releasing the June bonus episode Thursday, July 8th. By the time you're listening to this, it's probably already been uploaded. It might not be live, but it's going up there.
Now, I'm actually really excited for all you Cure of the What Now fans out there to listen to this one, because I believe it is almost 3 hours long.
Yes, it got split into 2 parts. The first part is us discussing the first episode of 8 different PreCure seasons. We go on long tangents, and then the second half is kind of talking about overall trends and things that we enjoy in PreCure.
Yeah, so I really enjoyed doing that episode, and I'm glad that it ended up on our free feed.
Absolutely. Now, we've done a number of PreCure episodes, and I believe that we have a pretty solid track record of them getting voted to be released to the public feed. We don't officially have a plan to do a PreCure bonus episode, once every 3 months, and so I'm glad that we're bringing this content to you, but it's not don't expect it to be the norm. It's not like some unofficial pattern.
That said, we do take suggestions for bonus episodes, so if you think there's a show like PreCure that we would really enjoy or have a good discussion about, shoot us a message and we'll check it out. I know Cardcaptor Sakura is high on a lot of people's lists. Magical Girl Utena is supposed to be really good, so there are a lot of shows in the Magical Girl canon that we haven't seen and could.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
That said, I think we can move on to our discussion question for the week. So this week was very paranormal, and I'm curious, how do you think each of the girls would respond to an actual paranormal event?
Now, do we know that it's an actual paranormal event? Do they see a ghost physically appear?
Yeah, let's just say they meet Casper or something.
Okay, I was worried that it was going to be something gets knocked over and they don't have an explanation for it, and it's well, that could be any number of things. I think that Minori would be the one who is the least shocked by it. She would kind of adjust her glasses and be like, oh, very interesting, and she would try to learn more about whoever it was that appeared.
She pushes her glasses up. They say there are all manner of things in heaven and earth.
Okay, yeah. Now, I want to say that Manatsu, given this episode, will have gotten over her fear. However, I'm not sure if she got over her fear of all ghosts or just this one particular ghost that she made friends with, so I do assume that she would still be the jumpiest if a ghost actually appeared before her.
Yeah, absolutely. Whereas I think Asuka would be the most skeptical. Like, she would start looking around for the hidden cameras or whatever.
Sure.
You know, if she had been in that room instead of Manatsu, she would have just flipped the skirt of the table up and been like, oh, there you are. There's a person under there. The doll was never talking.
She did show up eventually, though, and she just let Laura shake the doll, but, you know...
But she never heard the doll talking. She just heard Manatsu say.
Absolutely, yeah, for sure. Well, who does that leave? Songo, she seemed to be a little afraid of ghosts, so I can imagine her being slightly unnerved, but depending on how the ghost acts, you know, if we take Casper as the legitimate, you know, apparition or whatever that appears, then I think Songo and Manatsu would pretty quickly be like, oh, they're friendly. But if it was like a ghost that was knocking stuff over, maybe for a good reason, maybe it's a lion ghost that has a thorn in its ghost lion paw, you know, there's a reason it's acting the way it is, but I still think that Songo and Manatsu would be the least likely to search for a reason why it's acting like that, whereas Minori might be more likely to think that,
I could also see Songo being the most religious, so like maybe she would say a prayer to send it to the afterlife.
oh, okay, yeah, I like that.
She gives off pretty strong Cure Pine vibes to me, despite being a purple and not a yellow.
Sure, yeah, no, I think they would get along pretty well. But yeah,
And then that leaves Laura.
I mean, Laura would just whatever. Does this ghost try to prevent her from having a good day?
Is this ghost going to give her its ghost lunch money?
Does this ghost share its snacks? Absolutely, that's the most important question. Now, if this ghost opposes her rise to mermaid queen status, then obviously they would have a rivalry.
A classic rivalry, ghost versus mermaid.
Yeah, we've all heard the stories, right? It's just like cowboys and aliens, you know? Just a match that everyone has always thought about in the back of their minds.
Absolute. Well, because the United States is the only place where aliens ever seem to land. There's an esoteric reference for you. But yeah, I think that sums up the discussion question. Do you have a succinct summary for me?
Yes, there's a mansion, and Manatsu thinks that the mansion is haunted by a ghost that's possessed a doll. It's not a ghost, it's Elda, who has been stranded there, and she makes friends with this ghost child without ever realizing who it is. And then she tries to protect this mansion from being destroyed by a Yarane Da, and because she had been friends to Elda without knowing it, Elda manages to distract Chongi-Rei and Numeri, Dr. Numeri, long enough that the team's able to win, and then they protect the building from being destroyed for real by laws, by the construction company. And that's been your succinct summary.
That was so succinct. Well done.
Yeah.
Did you like this episode?
It was all right. Thinking about it, it actually feels kind of empty a little bit. Most of the time when I'm trying to succinctly summarize, I can point to at least like one thing that I left out for the name of brevity, or when we're doing our intros that's related to the episode, usually I can come up with like 2 or 3, but this episode was really bare. But I do like it. I've always thought that most PreCure have a reason to try to redeem the evil generals, so long as the evil generals have a reason for being evil. They at least have a reason to, like, ask, like, why are you doing this? And so, even though Manatsu doesn't know that it was Elda she was talking to, she has begun to plant the seeds for Elda to maybe reconsider her selfish actions, and in the end, that'll probably make for a happier narrative than just these 3 sea creatures were evil for the sake of evil.
Yeah, absolutely, I agree. I also liked this episode. Well,
Excellent. You
you said you kind of liked this episode. I just did like this episode.
Okay.
We got the single greatest Songo face of all time. So there's that. But also, it really spoke to the strength of Manatsu's character and
Sure.
the things that are important to her. But so you left this part kind of out of your succinct summary.
Oh, wait, there was something I left out.
They're all sitting around the table trying to decide what the Tropica Club is going to do next. And Manatsu goes, you know what, guys? I pick all the things. Why don't you guys pick something? And they go around the table, and none of these idiots can offer a single concrete suggestion. Now, That resonated very strongly with me. I would say you mostly, but you and I as a unit tend to be the leader in a lot of our friend groups because we have a lot of indecisive friends.
Sure.
And that moment of like, I've been making a lot of decisions for the group. Does someone else want to stand up and make a decision? And then radio silence.
There's one single cricket in the background being like, chirp, chirp, chirp.
And then I just loved that Manatsu, like, insisted they find a suggestion. And then they found one, and she's like, I don't want to, but you suggested it, so let's do it.
I will say they gave Manatsu any one thing where she's not, like, immediately like, oh, that Tropica shines. I'm glad that there are characters like Manatsu who are generally agreeable to, like, whatever so long as they're hanging out with friends, but it is also nice to have a little bit of extra depth to see her freaking out about ghosts, and she's hiding in the barrel. We see Minori pull a prank, though it's delivered very deadpan, because Minori isn't the most expressive character, but we still get her pulling a prank, which is a new one for me, so I think that she's starting to come out of her shell, and they're showing that in its own unique way as well.
Absolutely. Were you expecting Manatsu to be afraid of ghosts?
No, not really.
What would you have guessed as her weakness?
Maybe bugs, I guess, but that's just kind of like the stereotypical thing that, like, all girls generally don't like in most episodes, but yeah, I'm not really sure what would have been.
Well, and I mean, if it weren't for the setup for this episode, I think my guess as to her weakness would have been she's a bit of a steamroller Leslie Knope type, right? Like,
okay.
She just drags people into the stuff she wants to do and doesn't consider them, but clearly she does consider them, so... But no, I kind of have felt this whole season that Manatsu has very strong superhuman vibes. And it was nice to see her brought to everyone else's level just a little bit.
Absolutely, absolutely. I don't know how they would do this in an episode, but imagine if they, like, went to a desert and she's just like, it's boring! There's nothing here!
Oh, I love that. They're at an art museum and she keeps wanting to, like, run and shout, and Minori keeps having to drag her back to the group. Silent, Manatsu.
Manatsu's weakness is sitting still and being quiet.
Oh, that ADHD vibe, though.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what weaknesses would you guess for the others?
Well, Asuka's already shown herself to be a little kind of tsundere. Not exactly, not as dramatically as some other shows, but she sometimes has a hard time opening up. So maybe some kind of... Like, could you imagine if for some reason the different clubs had to work together to do something and she got paired up with the student body president? I can't imagine her doing her best, Tropica shining in that example, for example. Songo gives off such, like, calm vibes that, like, any, like, horror or, like, spookiness I could see.
Well, and we've already seen that her original weakness was kind of that she let herself be overshadowed by the people around her.
Sure.
So I could see her falling back into that a little bit with, like, pushy enough people.
Okay, yeah. And then Minori, I mean, we also kind of already have this pre-established, but I was thinking about it. She still isn't really able to express herself in a way that, like, children enjoy when she was reading the book. So I think that if we have a chapter, if we have an episode that's specifically tailored to challenge her, I assume that it will be them helping the drama club, and she'll have to act, but she'll have to put a little bit more heart into it than she currently is.
I like that a lot. Consider for a moment, she's very organized. She probably lines her books up with the edge of the table and lines her pencils up with her book. Imagine Songo leaning over and tilting one of the books slightly.
Minori is, like, reading or doing homework or whatever, and Songo moves something, and she looks up, and she kind of frowns a little bit, and then she moves it back, and then she goes back to what she's doing. But then when someone else does it a second time, she, like, looks up, and she kind of stares at it for longer this time, and then she puts it back, and then she goes back, and then the third time, she just, like, she looks at whatever thing's askew, and then she slowly looks at Songo and just stares, like, doesn't say anything, and then looks back and puts it back into its place and goes back to reading.
I've told you this story, but I don't think I've told it on mic. So I am a bit of a Minori type at times. And so on my desk at work, I have my tissue box very carefully lined up with the lines on the corner of my desk.
In case of spontaneous crying at the job. You know, that's what being an adult is. For
my boss did come into my office and start crying, so spontaneous crying does happen at my office. And it's not even mine. But anyway, so I have my desk very neatly lined up. Everything has a place. And every time my boss comes into my office...
Is she a listener, by the way?
No, she doesn't listen to this podcast.
Perfect.
But every time she comes in, she sits across from me, and she reaches over, and she moves my tissue box slightly. Not to pull a tissue out, she just moves it. And the first couple of times, I was like, well, that's kind of weird. Maybe she wanted to, like, lean her arms on the desk and it was in the way. But then it kept happening, and I sent you a message, and I was like... She's got to be messing with me, right? And you and a friend of ours were like, she's got to be messing with you, yes.
The way that you could tell she was messing with you, if she's committed to making it seem like she's not really doing it on purpose, is if she were making eye contact while she did it, but she never made a comment. That's as far as you can take it without being explicit, you know?
One of these days I'm just going to snap and I'm going to be like, you're doing this on purpose. And she's going to be like, what are you talking about? She didn't even notice she was moving it. It was like a sleeper agent command.
Oh my gosh. Absolutely. So I have a question.
All right.
Would you have expected, if I told you there was going to be an episode where one of the Tropical Club members and one of the evil villains were going to bond in some way, either knowing or not knowing that they were working together, would you have guessed Elda?
I would have guessed Elda. I would not have guessed Manatsu.
Okay.
I think we really missed an episode, We really missed a chance to have a Sango episode.
Yeah.
Because we know for sure that Sango is good with children, and so I could see her, or Laura even, who is also pretty good with the kids, I could see one of them being the one to kind of bring her around and be a big sister to her. And it almost feels like cheating that it was Manatsu. Like, everything's about Manatsu. She's the main character. We
did briefly talk about, before we started recording, about you jokingly being like, we got an episode that wasn't about Laura. And I was going to be like, oh, did we get some more interesting dynamics with Minori or Sango or Asuka, who have not gotten much screen time? And you go, it's Manatsu. That joke did not make the final cut of this episode, but I just want to let everyone know that I'm ready for the other girls to get a little bit of time. I feel like a lot of seasons have at least one character, or at least the bigger seasons have like a character that's sort of in the background that doesn't get as much development, or only really shines in the episodes that are about them, which I have dubbed the Rarity problem for the sake of My Little Pony, Friendship is Magic, in which Rarity is very generous in episodes about her, but in most other episodes, she is a little more selfish, even though she's supposed to be selfless all the time.
She's not ungenerous in those episodes. She's just dramatic, and that is frustrating for you.
Yeah, absolutely.
But this is not a My Little Pony podcast. Have you started that soundboard collection?
Yes, I've played it for you. Yeah.
This is not an Ant-Man podcast.
It was a Paul Rudd appreciation podcast. I'm willing to do an Ant-Man podcast, but Paul Rudd appreciation, I just don't know if there's as much content to talk about there. Because I don't know much about him. I know he's a person. I know he's pretty funny.
We could do a whole bonus episode just on the season he was in Parks and Rec. There you go.
Oh, that was him, wasn't it?
It was him.
This is not a Parks and Rec episode.
Elda,
yes.
Yes. She is... I started that sentence weird.
She baby? Is that what you're going to say?
She is certainly a baby. But no, what I was going to say was we expected the Laura stuff to be kind of drawn out, and it was a little rushed instead. So do you think the Elda stuff is going to come to a head fairly quickly?
I could see it going one of two ways. Either it's going to be a very slow burn with all three of the generals kind of generally being pushed towards the side of good, and then near the very end of the series they'll do a heel face turn, or we'll get a Elda turn, un-Elda turn really quickly, and then maybe Chongyure and Dr. Mary will also follow, and then we'll get different generals that are more menacing. I'm guessing it's probably going... I'm going to place my bets on it's going to be a long, drawn-out process. I don't think Elda will turn to the side of good next episode.
Yeah, I think you're right. It will be at least 2 episodes. But I think it'll be a little while. Here's a question.
Sure.
Why did it take Chongyure and Dr. Numeri so long to come get her? Did they just not feel like it? for a couple of days.
They seem to genuinely care for this child, you know, and I imagine that if they noticed she was missing, they probably would have, like, gone out immediately, because it doesn't... I know Chongyure cooks, but it doesn't seem like he spends all of his time cooking, so I imagine that they could have left to get her pretty quickly, and it's important that she doesn't fall into the hands of the enemy, so... I'm just gonna say plot convenience. I'm gonna say that they were in the middle of a very intense chess game for their souls. Like, they were going to be banished to the Shadow Realm if they lost. And they just barely managed to squeak by.
They were playing chess against a demon lord for their soul, and if they lost, they would turn into a werewolf and their family would be devoured.
Yes, absolutely. I thought you were making a different reference, but I realized you A, hadn't seen that anime, and B, no werewolves involved in No Game, No Life as far as I know.
Why not?
Yeah, I mean, I guess they do have furries.
I'm still waiting for a werewolf Sango. I think that's the ultimate evolution of her character, the pinnacle of Sango.
Would she become more of a physical fighter in that case?
No. She'd be like, you know how some dogs, like, they're just like boofers?
Okay, yeah.
That's Sango.
Okay, she stays at the sideline of battle, but she lets them know that she's very worked up.
She woos with all of her heart.
Perfect.
Chongyure's smile when he saw that Elda was safe melted my heart.
Yes, or the way that Dr. Numeri picked Elda up or whatever, like, there was a part of me that wondered if they didn't genuinely care for her as much as it seemed like they did, but this episode convinced me, like, they clearly care for this child, they clearly want to raise her right, and clearly that's gonna help them be turned to the side of good, you know?
What was the butler up to this episode? We didn't even see him. That's even more sus than when we do see him.
When he's on screen, it means that he's carefully projecting a mask, but when he's not on screen, it means that he's scheming secrets.
He was using his wrench and his screwdriver and his other tools to tune up his mech, the Witch of Delays.
Oh, there you go. I like that. I got a question for you.
Okay.
So, I cut this out of the succinct summary. You should watch the episode. It's a pretty good one. But Manatsu thinks that there's this doll that's haunted, but it's actually just a regular doll, and Elda's under the chair directly underneath the doll. And she asks for offerings because Elda is hungry. And she figures that she can trick this stupid girl who she doesn't know as Manatsu into giving her food. And Manatsu brings different food on different days. And near the end, when Manatsu starts striking up a conversation, she says, "Oh, I really liked that yellow fluffy thing," and Manatsu's like, "The omelet?" And she's like, "Yeah, I really like that, and I like the melon pan." And Manatsu's like, "Okay, yeah, melon pan." So the next day she brings melon pan and an omelet. My question is, do you think that that's going to, later down the line, help them figure out that Elda was the haunted doll?
Oh, maybe. I can't see Manatsu ever being smart enough to put the pieces together herself, but if someone else points it out, she'd be like, "Oh, you're right."
Yeah, maybe. See, I agree that she's not like a detective, a sleuth, you know, high IQ, high strat kind of character. But I do think that she's the sort of person who empathizes, and so I think, yeah, maybe you're right. Maybe she wouldn't notice it right away, but I think that if Elda did come to the side of good and was like, "Hey, could you feed me an omelet?" I think it would click, you know?
Absolutely.
Also, I just gotta say, their outfits this episode were on point.
Yes! Oh my gosh, I almost forgot to mention, their ghost hunting outfits are so good.
I think Laura's might have been my favorite.
I was going to ask whose was your favorite. Mine was Asuka, but Laura was a close second. They both gave off, I think it was the ponytail.
Yeah.
But they both gave off, like, strong Daphne vibes, which she never really had a ponytail in most of the
I don't think so, no.
But something about it, just that's what I was feeling.
Yes, absolutely. I liked Minori's hat. She kind of looked like a bug catcher from like Pokemon, and yeah, I think that fit really well.
Absolutely. Did we watch our Futari Wa episode this week?
Yes, we ate our broccoli. The Dokutsu Zone released its trump card, its final act of evil. 19 episodes into 48 episode run. There's this priest guy who has a name, but I don't know it. I'm not going to look it up. And he has not yet fought on the front lines, but today he shows up to steal everyone's souls.
His name is Piccolo.
His name is not Piccolo. His name is like Irudo or something like that. He said it very briefly.
But yeah, he shows up to steal everyone's souls because we find out that the gems or whatever they're after from the fairy world.
The Fountain of Light or the Garden of Light?
Something like that. But the Field of Rainbows, where Nagisa and Honoka are from, has a similar thing, and it's life energy. And so he's stealing everyone's life energy as like a light snack for the Dark Lord.
Something to tide him over while they're looking for the heart gems.
Prism stones.
Yes.
I knew their name.
Infinity gems. But yeah, it was a weird episode because it seems like the bad guys are enacting their like ultimate trump cards, but like I know there's so much more season after this, so I don't know where this is going to go. But it was also seemed like a strategy that he could have done at any time. Like he didn't have to do anything in particular in order to put the people to sleep and drain their energy. But no, it was a pretty good episode. It actually had some stakes. Delicious, delicious steaks. But the two girls were trying to fight this guy, and he was clearly overpowered. Like, they struggled against Geki Drago the first time he showed up, but then after that, they kind of beat him easily every time. But this guy was like, you can't even touch me. And there was a moment where it really seemed like maybe Mipple or Meppel, one of the two, Meppel, was going to die, was going to sacrifice himself, but the power of friendship gave them the ability to break through.
Yeah, his sacrifice broke the orb that was absorbing all the life energy, and it flowed back into the PreCure. Also, the fairies were gonna have a divorce.
Yeah.
Then they didn't.
That was such a weird episode because, like many of the episodes I've criticized, the plot with the fairies not getting along for a moment didn't feel connected at all to Piccolo's evil scheme. It technically did, because it was only once they kind of made up and were like, I'll protect you, no, I'll protect you. That was when they got the Field of Light power back, or Field of Rainbow power back. But at the same time, I wish that maybe the bad guy had been the one to make them fight with each other, and then maybe their love overcame, like, the possession or something.
Yeah, I think you're right. And also, their fighting didn't affect the transformation in any way, and I would have expected it to.
Right, yeah, so it was a good premise, but it was a little lacking in my opinion. But hey, pretty lights at the very end when the Field of Rainbow orb pops. So.
Imagine posting on our relationships. My fairy M ?
500 plus
is threatening a divorce with my girlfriend's fairy F ? What should we do to help them get over this?
Oh my goodness gracious. Yes, that was excellent. I also watched more Kira PreCure a la mode and got introduced to Ciel Hirakoshi.
Ciel!
Wait.
Kira-hoshi.
Kira-hoshi. Okay, right. She wants the Kira. For those of you who do not speak Japanese, I don't speak very much, but Hoshi means like want.
Oh.
And Kira is like light, and so she wants the Kira as her last name.
That actually makes a lot of sense as her human last name.
Yes, absolutely. And we got official confirmation that she is a fairy. They strongly hinted at the end of the last episode she took off her sunglasses and she had fairy eyes. Wait a second. We don't actually know those are fairy eyes, do we? Okay. Well, okay, so we've talked about this on the podcast before. Catherine has already seen all of Kira. We've talked about every episode and all the movies and stuff, so I'm pretty familiar with most of the plot developments that happened. So I knew she was a fairy, and last episode I could clearly see that she had non-human eyes.
In the fairies that we've seen, those are the eyes that they have.
Right. Those are also the eyes that Rio has when his mask breaks. Very curious. But we got confirmation at the beginning of this episode 19, that she is indeed a fairy, but no one else has noticed. Ichika came awfully close to figuring it out, but not quite. And then Ciel figured out the PreCure here, but didn't figure out that the 5 girls who fight with the power of sweets might be related to the 5 girls who run the magical patissier down the street. And also, she saw Ichika leave and followed like 3 seconds later, and there was a girl in pink who was dressed like a bunny who had the same voice as Ichika, but she doesn't know who these PreCure could possibly be. God damn it, Ciel. God damn it.
Her head is empty, only sweets.
God. But I did appreciate that she uses a lot of French phrases because she's been in Paris for like, what, a year, 2 years? A long time.
A while since, but you know what's great about that?
Okay.
It was foreshadowed.
Yes, it was.
In one of Pekarin's memories, the other fairies say something about their friends who are studying overseas.
Yes, absolutely. I thought you meant the time that Ichika saw Ciel on the TV, and they're like, she's a cooking prodigy, because I was like, that's directly related to her, though. That wasn't foreshadowed. But no, I'd forgotten about that little comment that had been made before. I'm really liking Ciel so far. She gives me big Laura vibes, although I assume that she will also soften up, just like Laura did when she officially became human and stuff, but I like the episode a lot. There were a lot of good facial expressions.
How did you feel about Ciel telling Ichika that her sweets were garbage?
See, I think when you told me about that episode originally, I imagined her just being a hard ass, just like, you suck, get out of here. But having actually watched the episode, it's clear that Ichika is simply trying to imitate someone she thinks is better than her, and in that imitation, she has lost the thing that makes her cooking special. So it would be really weird if the girl who has enough Kira rune to summon a PreCure transformation doesn't have enough Kira rune to impress this fairy. So I'm glad that it was sort of like an uncertainty doubt thing that caused her sword to falter, so to speak.
Yeah, absolutely. This episode also had one of my favorite screen caps I took through my whole Kira watch through, but Ichika flings herself into the air and then throws herself on the ground, and Ciel gasps and goes, Japanese prostration!
Yeah, absolutely. I have not looked into verifying the claims, but apparently there are actually sporting events where people compete in extreme, they don't call it Japanese prostration, they have a word for it, but there's apparently, you can look up clips of people running just like she did and jumping over a hurdle and landing in that bowing state.
That's amazing.
It absolutely is. I also have to say, there's no way you could have made this connection when you were watching Kira PreCure a la mode, because it was before the current season had come out, but Ciel clearly is introduced picking up a honeydew melon and being like, this would be delicious. Ciel said sparkling fruits 3 years before we got Kira Papaya.
Yes. Speaking of which, I have heard a rumor that each season hints at the next season.
Yeah.
So let's cross our fingers for the next season to be ghost themed. If there's something strange in your neighborhood, who you gonna call PreCure?
PreCure, guess we'll die. All right. Have we gotten any tweets in a bottle this week?
Not for this episode. No, I didn't see any.
Fair enough. I did ask on Reddit, I rephrased the what would you do with mini Manatsus, and we got a comment that was something along the lines of, I would protect her and try to keep her safe. And, when I imagine a mini person, there's two ways that my mind goes. There's the obvious, if that were an actual living creature, if I had a dog or a cat that was that small, or I had a pet mouse, obviously I would be very worried about its safety. But in terms of just pure cartoon hijinks, I love the idea of them being little gremlin monsters that cannot be stopped. Could you imagine if you had a tiny Erika Kurumi? You would be gone. Your bank account would be empty. Your identity stolen.
Your kitchen on fire. So we have a fairly terrible goblin son of a cat.
Yes.
I'm afraid that if I had a mini Manatsu, he would terrorize her. There would be nothing I could do to keep him from attempting. The boy steals my ice cream off of my spoon.
Yeah. Now, okay, so here's what I was just saying, though, about the dichotomy. Either she would be terrorized by Rocket the cat, or she would tame Rocket and ride him into battle. Can you imagine her standing there in,
jousting position, and she's got a pencil, and he's running at her, and she's like,
stand your ground! I absolutely love that.
What do you think is coming? We kind of talked about this already, but what do you think is coming our next episode?
I don't know. So this episode was called The 7 Mysteries of the School, so I would love it if we got more of those as the series went on. I don't know if I necessarily want them one episode after another, because that becomes a little too formulaic, but who knows? It'd be kind of cool if there was somehow, I don't think they would do this, but if there was somehow a secret 6th Ranger, a second 6th Ranger, who would actually, in this case, be the 6th PreCure, and maybe finding all 7 of the school's mysteries would allow them to find the lost henshin item of legend.
I think that would be awesome. we are getting pretty deep into summer, so I think our annual Star Festival episode would be cool.
Oh, yeah, absolutely, of course.
And
That'd be great.
Laura's never gotten to go stargazing because she's a mermaid. So I think that would be a really sweet episode. And there would probably be something about the bonds of their friendship. And we'd be like, friendship? And they'd be like, friendship?
Yeah, just friends, just gals being pals. We did at one point, I took a screenshot of Futari Wa episode 19 because there was a very prominent handhold that wasn't when they were transforming. It was a more touching moment or whatever. But yeah, I mean, I've given up on trying to guess because this show is so episodic, but based off of the fact that we just got some Laura episodes, she's been introduced, we just got a summer episode, I assume that the cycle is resetting, so come on, Sango, rolling the dice for a Sango episode.
Rolling the dice for Sango. Some progress on whatever's going on with Asuka and the president would be nice. Mm. Anything about Minori? Like, it doesn't have to be a Minori episode, but I feel like of all of the characters, she's gotten the least characterization, even in the episode that was about her. And I'd love to give her a little bit more time to, like, be a person.
I'm gonna have to disagree with you there, because I think that of all the characters, Minori, of the three side characters, it's so weird. Manatsu and Laura undoubtedly get the most screen time and the most love and attention. I think of the three side characters that Minori actually has some of the most character development, because she has, like, the episode where she was able to use her imagination to figure out how to beat the bad guy, and she was the one who talked to Laura about giving up something, and she was the one who body swapped with Laura. So I think that if you were gonna, like, put, like, a tier list, you'd have Laura and Manatsu as S, Minori as an A, and the other two would be, like, B or C.
See, I will agree with you that she's gotten more screen time. I just don't know if the screen time has been as quality as the little that we've gotten for the other two. But I could be wrong. It's possible that because she's so quiet of a character, I'm just kind of like gently sweeping it all under the rug. We haven't been shy about the fact that the quiet type usually isn't our favorite. So
yeah, okay, so here's my official guess. As right or wrong as it will be, I think that the next episode, a competing makeup store will open up across the street from Sango's mom's store, and the girls will have to find some way to help her business find that quality that proves that her products are superior, and do something with that, and it'll have to do with Sango.
And I think, as a crack jump off of that, the girls will plot to burn the opposing store down.
They'll have to, Manatsu and Asuka will have to keep an eye on Laura to make sure she doesn't escape to commit an arson, while Minori and Sango do the actual work of the episode.
And that has been your final thought.
Outro goes here. Thanks for listening, everyone, and don't forget to Tropica Shine.
You'll be dancing with me today.
Ha-ha! What a great episode of King of the What Now, your One Piece podcast that started from the very beginning and stars these two doofuses. If you want to follow us on social media, Twitter is the best place to do that. I am at KOTWN_pod.
And I am at Pirate Ghost Host.
Absolutely, yes. We share all sorts of thoughts on there, some related to the podcast, some related to other things. But you can also reach us through email at KingOfTheWhatPod@gmail.com, or you can also find us on Patreon. We would love some subscribers or supporters, whatever the technical term is. Patrons. So fancy and grown up. And you can find that at patreon.com/KingOfTheWhatPod. You can find all sorts of things like bonus episodes, and you get to see the full cold open candidates, not just the ones that make it into the episode. Maybe someday if I learn to draw, I'll put stuff up there. We're always looking for suggestions and feedback. And speaking of which,
please take a moment to rate and review our podcast wherever you get us from. So iTunes, Spotify, Scrivener, that's for writing. But wherever you listen to our podcast, take a moment to leave a review. It helps other people find us. We are so grateful to all of our listeners, and we couldn't do this without you.
Absolutely. Word of mouth is super powerful, so if you have a friend who likes One Piece and they haven't heard of us, just direct them to the latest episode. And if they hate us, they can tell us why. And if there's an actionable item, we'll try to please you. That's how this works. Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.